Mr. Cristobal Cobo is an expert who has spent the past 20 years working at the intersection of the future of learning, cultures of innovation, and human-centered technologies, focusing on the effective use of new technologies in education in middle and low-income countries worldwide. Now, can we have Mr. Cobo on the screen?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Should I go ahead?
Yes, sure.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Very good morning to all of you. I wish I could be with you today, but also I'm very happy to be with you without having a massive carbon footprint. So what I'm going to do now is try to contribute to the discussion of AI in education policies. And I'll try to show some experiences that hopefully will fit into the whole 3 days of work that you are having. Let me pull out the presentation, and I will appreciate if you can confirm if you can see it well. Is it right? No? So, assuming we are fine, let's give it a go. So I think to start, it's fair to say that last week was very, very important week in the US, where I am now sitting. The White House launched the executive bill order, where a very comprehensive approach to address a multidimensional, very complex, but at the same time fascinating topic. And at the same time, in the UK, it took place the AI Safety Summit, a very important summit with a number of decision makers from different countries and a number of key industries in this sector. However, if you look carefully at this picture, you will realize that within this summit, there were certain parts of the world, particularly the global north, which was much better represented than the global south. And why do I mention that? Is because when we bring the global south into the discussion, other voices start to emerge, like the serious concern that exists in Kenya for workers which are working to train algorithms which are very, very poorly paid, or the case of Chile, which the neighbors were really concerned that Google was aiming to build data center that is really, really consuming in terms of water. It's water intensive, a very important consumption source. Just to give you a reference, Microsoft, for instance, last year mentioned that 1.7 billion gallons of water were produced just to cool the servers that train AI. So it's really, really important when we address and we design policy, trying to understand the immediate consequences, but also the side effects that usually are not always addressed when we don't have all the perspectives within the discussion. So these 3 days, you have been exploring a lot in terms of this concept, but I think there are a few approaches that can help us. First of all, AI is such a broad umbrella concept that I think it's important to understand that it's a multi-purpose tool. It's a collection of tools. It's more like electricity, right? So it can help us to train machines to perform intelligent tasks, but we don't need a specific task. We need a literacy to address this in a much more comprehensive way. Number two, the LLMs, the large language model that these systems use, are data hungry. So it consumes huge volumes of data, but at the same time, it's important to ask ourselves, where is that data coming from? What realities are better represented and which realities can be underrepresented? And when we think in generative AI, the kind of knowledge, contents, videos, images, and sound that produce is outstanding. It mimics human creativity. But the word mimic is really important because we have to develop the filter to understand when it's human and when it's not. So with that clarity, I think we can move to the second concept, which is important to understand the difference between learning from AI, for instance, when you learn a language using Duolingo, to learn about AI, when you develop some level of AI fluency, and to learn with AI, when we use learning analytics and systems to track the learning process of the students, for instance, right? So when we have had all those clarifications, also we can have important distinctions using generative AI to enhance the role of the teacher in the classroom and using these systems to address the lack of teachers or the self-learning outside of the classroom. So in each one of these cases, we will need to provide different kind of guidance and different kind of support, because if we only talk about the use of AI, we might not be addressing the key aspect. Let me share with you an image that this this week was released by LinkedIn Economic Graph Research Program Institute. And they are doing something really, really interesting. They are clustering professions based on, according to them, what can be augmented, disrupted, or insulated, depending on the level of influence of the generative AI. And interestingly, the teacher profession, as you might see in this little dot at the middle, is in the transition between that it can be augmented, we can amplify the role of the educators, but also it can be insulated, meaning that educators can survive without using AI in the short term at least, right? It's hard to tell the future. But more important than the professions, I think the question that we can do at the policy level is, what are the tasks that teachers are doing that can be easily enhanced by the role of these technologies? And what are the tasks that we can release from teachers that can be more bureaucratic or less creative that we can use with these systems? So we navigate in a way that we can leverage the best of these systems and at the same time enhance the human connection that teachers can do with their students. Now, just to give you a kind of sense of the policy discussions that are taking place, for instance, recently the House of Commons, and you can access this information in the QR code, they are discussing, for instance, 3 key components of the impact of these systems in the schools. One, on the one side, they say AI tutoring systems show a strong potential to improve the outcomes, especially the struggling students. But at the same time, the adoption is really uneven, and we really lack the strong evidence to see at the large scale the real impact. In terms of assessment, we know that generative AI can transform the assessment by generating really high quality contents and provide very insightful assessment. But at the same time, the potential for cheating is something that we haven't been able to address with a single solution. We have to develop much more a culture of change, and I'm going to get back to that. Another example is Gen AI really can help the students to read and write. But at the same time, foundational literacy, numeracy, and higher order skills are more important than ever. Right. At the same time, the same sort of discussions, if we bring them at the policy level with a quick question, who is going to regulate that? So one option is to enhance the capacities of existing agencies that today exist, but we will have to, they say, we have to consolidate the capacities of these communities which might not be experts in these topics. Number 2, these tools can really be transformations for education, but let's be careful because we can automate also the poor teaching, and we don't want that, certainly. Number 3, these kind of tools really demand to have a global outlook of what are the most relevant experiences that are taking place globally, like the summit that you're having these days. But at the same time, let's be sure that the Global South is also in the discussion. Otherwise, we have a risk of underrepresentation. So what we want at the end, I guess, is promoting a kind of AI fluency. So it's not if we use the tool A, B, or C, probably we have to use A, B, C, and D, and Z as well, right? But we have to, one, understand the difference of how it works, what is the potential, and in what context we can use it. Number 2, we need to know what are the basics elements. We need to provide tools for teachers to understand that a chatbot is not the same that a search engine or the same that a virtual assistant, right? Or the ethic component that was mentioned a moment ago by Dr. Kosha. So we need to be sure that the ethical principles are in the discussion. Fairness, transparency, accountability. Or in terms of how to apply these tools, I think the most important threshold is whether we are being able to use these tools to solve real problems or not. Otherwise, it's just a theoretical discussion. And finally, how we prepare our students to critically assess the outputs of these systems. I think that really plays an essential role. Let me give you an example. On the left-hand side, you will see how this tool is able to see and decode the reality and really provide a decent description of a classroom. In the right-hand side, although, we will see that if you ask the system to provide an image of a biochemistry professor at the UK, it will provide a clear bias of a white man, of a white person, and also men. We never said that in the prompt. So this system really inherit the training data that has been provided to make the system work. So we will have to address this challenge. We have serious troubles in terms of transparency as well. Probably many of you have seen already the Stanford University Foundational Model Transparency Index. You were discussing about the index. Here there is an interesting index, right? So where we can see how transparent are these systems. And so far, we don't have great news in terms of the better performed one doesn't reach even the 60%. So there's a lot of work to do in these systems and the ones that will come in the future. So trying to aggregate many of the things that I have presented. On the one side, we have to develop among the education communities the needed literacies to understand when there is manipulation or misinformation. But at the same time, we will have to provide and adopt better standards to ensure impartiality in the training data that is feeding these systems. We have to navigate beyond bias and discrimination. Number three, we will have to find tools to audit and provide explanation why these systems are providing answer A and no answer B. And in many cases, this can have tremendous implications. In terms of privacy, I would say the challenge we have before Gen AI are a very nimble problem in comparison with the ones that we have in the future. So we will have to provide and develop new rules and structures. And I think in the EU, this is a discussion that is still taking place. And there are two side effects that I think is important to highlight. One is these systems are not carbon footprint neutral, and we will have to develop systems which are more energy efficient. And number two, in some cases, some professions, some activities of the professions will be automated. So that means for universities to rethink the training programs, the capacity building, the curriculum and programs, and at the same time, better prepare professionals to work in a human and AI collaboration. So a moment ago, the idea of the calculator was mentioned, and I think this is a very good example. Yuval Harari mentioned a few weeks ago in the New York Times, he said that the first step to buy time is to buy time to upgrade our 19th century institutions for an AI world, to learn to master the AI before it masters us. So I think time is important. And I think we have to explore ourselves how to update the systems, the regulations, and the institutions we have, but perhaps even more, the mindset that is behind the people who provide those rules. I really like the approach of the Russell Group universities in the UK, where a group of elite universities have decided to work together in this, not in isolation, to better prepare the students and the teachers to navigate these tools, to better equip the staff to use AI in an ethical, promoting the integrity, but at the same time, understanding that they will have to revise the traditional assessment that they have been using for centuries, right? But this has to be a discussion of different disciplines and different institutions. We cannot expect that one institution will solve these problems. So I want to close with 4 key messages that I think can help us to navigate into this fascinating time. The first one is we have to move fast, but we don't have to break things. What do I mean with moving fast? The first thing is, let's keep in mind that the technology that we have today is going to be way slower, way more limited, and way more simpler than the one that we will be using in a year, right? So we are facing an accelerated change that make expertise very, very limited. So the room of expert that you have today is a privilege, right? And in the same way, the pace of change is uneven, concentrated, and extremely unpredictable. So we have to be ready for the adaptation and regular revision. Number 2, I think we have a big challenge here. We don't want to amplify the existing digital divides, but we have to be aware that this will generate quite likely new digital divides. So that means that AI has been so far a technology from the global north, and this can really exacerbate pre-existing inequalities in terms of overrepresenting some realities and subrepresenting some, right? So if we want to address digital divides, the old and the new ones, we have to go through stages: access, use, proficient use, and overall a change in the mindset, which is the one that is more difficult to change. Now, I think it's really important to understand that many of the citizens which are outside of the building where you are don't understand anything about this thing. So we have to provide clear guidance and provide safe zones for people to navigate. And obviously provide proactive supervision to be sure that people are getting the support when they need it. Now, in terms of educations, we have a tremendous opportunity here. But that means not going for prohibiting the use of this tool, which is what we saw at the beginning of the year, and more in the direction of offering guidance, right? Because these systems are offering a new relationship with knowledge. What do I mean with that? We can really have a selective use of the cognitive engagement, where we want to put all our energy and creativity, and what are the things that we want to automate. This is something that I think has been incremented in the 11 months of this year. Now, AI literacy will mean to me balancing between the benefits and the risk. And a big concern I have is we have a serious lack of qualified teachers in this field, right? So the institutions will need to either create an AI framework or embrace a one that exists, right? But we have to monitor the changes that this thing will produce. And a clear example is what is going to be the changes in the labor demand and how we prepare the future generations to navigate those changes, right? For me, we have a strong opportunity between distinguishing in which opportunities these systems will amplify capacities and where it will automate tasks. And understanding that we can navigate in a much more granular way how we can provide support. And let me finish with this one. I believe the AI industry is today seeking guidance from regulators. This is a big opportunity. This is not what we saw in the social media time, right? And that means to adopt industry standards, national regulations, and coordinations at the international level. So the big question that many are having is, do we need a national AI and education agency, or do we need a multi-institution agency or a super agency much more decentralized? This is a discussion that is taking place in many countries. What I've seen in countries like Japan, Australia, US, and UK is guidance comes after serious consultation with the different communities, not only with the experts in the room, but also with the users. I think all these issues in terms of regulation will bring serious questions about digital sovereignty. And I think this is something that demands a full workshop on that. And finally, my invitation is, before simplification, let's try to unpack what are the short-term effects and what could be the long-term effects. And with that, it's much easier to navigate where we want to go. Just let me finish saying that we are in a fascinating time, but we still need better evidence. And the community, the society is in serious call for better regulations. Let me stop here.
Thank you, Mr.